It's a matchup we saw some of in the mock last weekend when I was doing coverage. It's a pretty tough matchup for the Eldrazi side, I think, when there's no Kozilek's returns in the main, which is the case with Anna. So going to be a bit of an uphill slog, but not unwinnable by a long shot.
For sure. And here we are in the third place deciding match of MTGO Masters Season 2, Week 12. And we got an opening hand here where Hayne seems to kind of have, a 1-2 spells. And Arnie's got, some mana and some way to do it.
Yeah, this is the first part of what Hayne really wants to see going into the match, which is winning the die roll. I think this is colossally important for the Breach deck. It's really, really hard to get there if you don't win the die roll. You're just much slower than the energy deck. But yeah, this is a good start. I think Hayne just really needs to Anna really needs to just find ways to close out the game quickly, and he'll be an excellent shape.
Yep. We're going to see an Ancient Stirrings on turn 1. Arnie giving Hayne a life. So kind of him. Arnie gets to play this powerful card selection spell. At one point, players wanted this banned in Modern, and it adds an Emrakul to Arnie's hand as we pass over to Hayne.
In most matchups, when you throw the Breach and Emrakul, you win the game because you have unsacrificed 6 permanents. There's no real coming back from that. Against Energy as well, the few matchups where that's not necessarily the case. It's entirely possible to throw the Breach and Emrakul, getting 15 damage. Your Energy opponent is slid 8 to 10 life and has 5 or 6 permanents sitting around. So,
well,
not quite the be-all end-all.
I beat Nathan Stoyer last week with 0 permanents after the Emrakul hit me in this exact matchup. So it can be really tough from the through the breach side, to say the least. You just don't have a lot of ways to actually win a game of Magic. So Johnny comes down.
That said, this is kind of the one way I could see things working out for Anna, where if given a turn or two, Mason does not draw. Sorry, Hayne does not draw more permanents, more threats, and Anna's able to go Kozilek's command into all his dust. That's one of the ways I could see him winning this, is if Hayne just kind of runs out of gas and then Anna goes over the top of him.
Yep, and Arne did draw Ulamog. Arne deciding if he wants to Kozilek's return now, maybe wait for the next turn. Probably going to see the spawns get made when it comes to that. But we could see, a scry and a draw in combination with that, or maybe a kill spell. Answering either this Johnny or this Ocelot Pride. Arne just wanting to take a minute to really think through the lines here and what's available.
Yeah, it's a complicated spot. Like you said, the spawns are almost certainly getting made. I think Anna's pretty close to priced into scrying and drawing here, just to make sure he can hit that land next turn to be able to afford all this dust. The command would give him 2 spawns, and then he needs 5 mana off his lands to be able to cast it. The only issue is that, and the reason he's thinking so long is if he does that, he might die.
Yeah.
This energy deck represents a lot of damage very quickly, and Anna doesn't know that Hayne doesn't have something like a Goblin Bombardment in hand that would just end the game really quick.
Yeah, Goblin Bombardment sort of become an all-star in this deck, something that does, like you're describing, present a lot of reach, and it's a great permanent for your Johnny to reach that red requirement. And yeah, Arne's really in the tank trying to figure out how to get out of this, because he does want that 3rd place. You can't go to Worlds now and say that he is the champion. That is psychological damage for him. But, he can maybe come in with 3rd.
Yeah. This match could matter a lot, Round 1 of Worlds, Anna sits across the table from Hayne, having won this match, and looks at him, and Hayne, he knows he's cooked. He knows he's already lost once to Anna. He's been in this spot before, and he can't afford to be in this spot again. So, lots of pride on the line, lots of psychic damage to be inflicted at Worlds should one player win this and play the other there.
And Alexander Hayne is someone who will bring it up. You play against Javier Dominguez, he's not going to bring it up. But Hayne's going to be like, remember when we last played and I beat you in front of all those people and Arya and Mason made fun of you? That was pretty cool. And that is something you can easily imagine Hayne doing. It would not be a problem at all. Speaking of problems, Arnie's moving really quick. So we're going to be right back with the more Magic. Sorry to interrupt you there. I just want to let the viewers at home know why you're looking at our great faces instead of some Magic. Speaking of magic, Arya, oh, it looks like maybe we're back. I had a good segue. Don't need it. Save it for later, as it looks like maybe Arne wasn't actually thinking, but instead was having to reboot the computer a little. But anyways, here we are back in this exact same position. And yeah, I think I kind of like holding just because it lets you get a little bit better idea. Like, do you want to be drawing or do you want to be killing? Like there's even a world where maybe you do want to like kill and draw instead of make spawns, like in a world of bombardment comes down, since Hayne could use that to stop your mana. But another land off the top for Hayne, just kind of actually like you playing the energy deck in our semi-final match.
Yeah, Hayne does have access to the Arid Mesa to fetch for Surveil Land, which I think is really important.
Mm-hmm. Notably, Hayne doesn't have Giganta, so he can't just put that in hand like we saw from you, which would have been a nice little combo with Arena of Glory. Hayne smacks in for 5, plays his land, and looks like it's just going to probably be passing the turn here. Could bolt his cat. I think that's what he's considering right now to maybe get a Johnny. But like you mentioned, he knows Arnie doesn't have Cosmic Return in the main deck, so that's going to make that play a little less appealing than maybe it normally would.
So, yeah, given that Hayne doesn't have a red permanent, there's not really that much value to him flipping a Johnny, like you said. It would be interesting to see how that calculus would have changed if that maybe been like an Amp Raptor or something, whether
Mhm.
he'd have wanted to spend a lightning bolt to maybe like get some more value. But yeah, as it stands, he's just kind of in the waiting room for all this dust.
Well, what if Arnie just wins the game here with putting Emrakul under an Ugin's Labyrinth and attacks with Ulamog the Defiler?
That
Pretty good.
that seems pretty good.
Yeah, and it looks like Arnie is just doing the math here. I believe it's lethal, if I remember how Ulamog works correctly. Yeah, it looks like Arnie's actually reading it, getting a double check.
I believe Annihilate 15 will probably get there regardless of the damage input involved.
Yeah, well, you never know, but and it does look like Arnie is going to most likely go for that here. Probably thinking, is there any way Hayne can stop me? He doesn't have Reprieve main like Arya had and her sideboard. No, okay, I'm going to go for it. Let's just win this game and try and lock it up. And a kind of a quick one.
That's part of the advantage of playing the specific version of the deck rather than say the like more mid-range Eldrazi decks that are just looking to play out creatures rather than through the breach in Emrakul and Ulamog. Is you
Mhm.
do have this potential to kind of win the game out of nowhere, and that gives you a lot of equity in matchups like this where your fair game plan is just almost certainly going to be slower than what they're doing.
Have to agree. And it looks like Hayne's taking a second maybe to also read the Ulamog. See, is there anything I can do here? Hayne's someone who's willing to take a little bit of time, double check his work. And yep, we're going to be moving on to the sideboards. Arnie up a game. Hayne brings in a bunch of stuff. I think Hayne actually just copied the list I played last week, is what it looks like. We got the same person from MTGO. And, has a bunch of Charmaws and Sunspine links to deal damage. And we're seeing Arnie start to, figure out, does he want something like a Thought Not Seer? Has the World Breakers pulled aside? Pretty interesting. What do you think about it from Arnie's side?
I think in honest side, it's all about trying to be fast, stem the early bleeding. So you definitely want the Kozilek's returns, and the Dismember quite likely comes in. At that point, it's all about what you want to take out, I think, in honest spot, like which cards line up poorly against what Hayne is doing, which cards are a little clunky. So some of the slower stuff I could see coming out to make room for these, but really, I think the name of the game is Kozilek's Return. You're trying to be as fast as possible. You're trying to cast Kozilek's Return as reliably as possible. And beyond that, it's pretty similar to game one. Notably, we
Mhm.
see we see him taking out a copy of Through the Breach. And that
Mhm.
makes a lot of sense because we just talked about how sometimes you Through the Breach Emrakul and it's not even enough of this matchup. And at that
Mhm.
point, what's the card really doing for you? There's some
Mhm.
situations where it's good, but it's not the always win the game button it is in many other matchups.
Yep. Yeah. And just sort of putting in the final touches. Malevolent Rumble, a card that has really impressed in Modern and super nice in this deck with just, kind of making your land drops, finding the pieces of the combo you need, but also setting up things like Kozilek's Return to be a sweeper later on when you play your big boom boom.
Yeah, this is one of the more fair uses of Rumble, even
Mhm,
there as compared to what we saw you use it for in Yawgmoth and what it was used for in Nadu. When decks
mhm,
like those on top of the selection, it was giving a body that was really valuable. It was giving you like delirium payoffs, like shifting
mhm,
woodlands to get more redundancy. In this matchup, it's just selection, maybe a little mana, maybe a blocker, but like
mhm,
there's some fringe graveyard synergies, but mostly it's there for selection and even just in that role, it's clearly strong enough to make the cut.
mhm. And speaking of making the cut, it's time to cut on down to the match as our players are done mulliganing, or excuse me, sideboarding. And whew, Hayne's got a Ragavan into a Blood Moon on 2 if he wants it. That's pretty good.
Yeah, Blood Moon, pretty good in this matchup. I think it's a lot less good here than against traditional Tron.
Mhm,
Uh, Specifically, the talismans in Anna's deck mean that Blood Moon can plausibly Blood Moon can plausibly be like played around, played through with like green
mhm,
cards being available and single pip colorless cards being available. Particularly post mod when there's like Kozilek's Return.
mhm.
Game plans like this of Kozilek's Return into the ring can often win it through Blood Moon, so not necessarily game over. Also,
Also, the man is awful.
yeah, the mana is horrendous for Hayne if he wants to do that because yeah, if he plays a turn 2 Blood Moon, that would mean not being able to fetch a plains. Because the only
Mhm,
untapped land on 1 was the Sacred Foundry, and then Arena of Glory on 2 means yeah, no plains being fetched, which is pretty problematic. They're not necessarily the end of the world with this Ragavan providing at
mhm.
least a little white mana.
Yep. And Grove of the Burning Willows getting cast. I'm sorry, going to be used to cast Ancient Stirrings. Arnie going to try and figure out exactly what he needs. Takes an Ugin's Labyrinth. That could be a turn 3, the One Ring. Pretty powerful. Speaking of the One Ring, Hayne picks up his own copy.
Yeah, I wonder if there's ever any consideration from Hayne for like waiting a turn before playing out Blood Moon just to be able to develop his board a little more. Obviously, with the benefit of like us being able to see the match,
Mhm.
that looks better to us. But yeah, it's a pretty close call. The main issue I think with playing out Blood Moon here is it being soft to Kozilek's Return, but it's really
Mhm.
hard to get out multiple creatures and pump things up with Guide of Souls if you're only working with white mana off of Ragavan treasures and none off lands.
Yeah, I agree. I also think Blood Moon, like you're mentioning, it isn't game over. It's kind of a stopgap. So Hayne, is probably going to be wanting to have pressure on board. Ragavan does a decent amount of that, right? But having those extra bodies could be a great way to pressure Arnie. So it is a really tough decision, despite sort of having your sideboard card in your hand on turn 2. And here comes the Blood Moon. Arnie getting to play his stomping grounds for what would have just been a mountain for him, anyways. Plays the talisman and passes the turn back. And is threatening the One Ring and Cosmic Return if Hayne doesn't put up enough pressure to, make Arnie want to pull the trigger on the K return.
And notably, this might look not great for Hayne, but it could have been considerably worse. If he
Mhm,
had actually played out the Guide of Souls plus a Johnny, I think this game would have been pretty close to over on the spot
mhm,
because Anna would have just been able to go Ugin's Labyrinth, exile something, goes Lex Return, remove all 3 of your creatures. I don't really
mhm,
think there's any coming back from that for Hayne, so this did actually kind of work out better for him, if
mhm.
probably still not particularly well for him.
Yep. So you're working out. Let's see what Amped Raptor hits as it flips over the deck. Maybe hit the One Ring since the card wasn't played. I think that was the
Yeah.
only card we couldn't cast there.
The One Ring or Sunspine Links, I think, are the 2 gods
Hmm.
in sideboard that couldn't be cast in that spot.
Hmm. Maybe also wants to save the energy for the ability to grow. That's something that's totally within range. But Stowing Microspawn picked up here my most hated card. So, fun fact about me.
Today I learned, I suppose. I mean, you were on the MH3 team. You
Yeah,
could have stopped that. That's all you.
that the card is. You know what? It's worse because of me being on. I'll tell you that. And actually, maybe that's why I don't like it too. Is because it's not really this version of Sewing Microspawn. I know the skeletons in that one's closet. As we pass the turn back with Bonecrusher Giant off the top for Hayne, a way to actually fight through the One Ring.
Yeah, no white mana here though, and a board probably getting wiped by Kozilek's Return. I think it's going to make it really, really hard for Hayne to come back into this. Even if both players have the One Ring, end up having the One Ring in play, Anna just utilizes it a lot better, given
Mhm.
access to all colors of mana for him and the ability to like kind of go over the top. Meanwhile, Hayne's just kind of sitting here playing only red creatures, which I think is not going to get him there.
Yep. And you know what? Bone Crusher Giant, 4/3, 4 turns. I played enough there, excuse me, Eldraine Standard to know that card can go the distance. We'll have to see if it can do it today, though. And why not picking up a talisman? We'll allow him to go talisman, land, ring if he wants it. Could also play Sowing Microspawn. Decides to play the card, the One Ring.
Talisman's actually a really good draw here, I think.
Mhm.
Just getting more mana into play when One Rings can get you a pile of cards seems really nice. It allows him to develop in a way that's going to matter over the course of a long game. I think we will likely see like Sowing Microspawn next turn, and then in a few turns, I wouldn't be shocked at all to see some Eldrazi getting hardcast.
Yeah, and even stuff like this, all is dust now, you're making the land drops to get towards it, which can then free from the Blood Moon, get your double mana going sooner. Although, like you mentioned, it's kind of bad for Hayne, and Arne might be able to sniff out like that Hayne has some white cards stuck in hand. It might just play under the Blood Moon.
Yeah, at the very least, I could see Anna choosing to wait a little bit on the All Is Dust until he gets to a spot, maybe in a turn or two, where he can play the All Is Dust and then you play the All Is Dust, have some lands untapped after, and use those lands as double lands to produce a bunch of mana, so that he can also be the first one to play to play to the board post it.
Hmm. And Sony Microspawn was kicked, going to blow up that land. Search Arne's deck for a land. I imagine it's probably, yeah, just one of those Eldrazi temples. Like, you don't even really need your green with your talisman. So if the Blood Moon does go away, you get a little extra mana. But One Ring's going back and forth here as Hayne is down to 18. And draws the Sunspine Links. That is a lot of damage for both players, but a lot of damage still.
Yeah, that's one of the ways I can see Hayne winning this is maybe chaining Sunspine Lynxes or just face burn between that bombardment and bolt.
Hmm. That makes sense to me. It's coming down. Damage can't be prevented, and then does damage to each player for each non-basic they have. And Arne is down to 8 with a One Ring on 2 counters. That's going to be 6, and that's just a couple bolts away.
Yep, couple bolts or just one more Sunspine Lynx.
True. Yeah, and the One Ring will not stop you if you try to chain those together. As Through the Breach is drawn off the top, that is a good one here. And Emrakul, I think, will basically clean up the game.
Yep.
So
The downside of Sunspine Lynx also dealing a bunch of damage to you is it puts you conveniently under 15.
Yep. And here comes Through the Breach into Ulamog the Defiler, just going out with some style. And congratulations to Arne, who is going to be the 3rd place. Congratulations to Hayne as well for making top 4. I know that will go down in his Magic achievements and something he will think back to later on in life.